Today I wanted to make a video about the value of women and how stalking happens in the first place. Like, why do we arrive in our lives to that point where we can be object and target of stalking and such extreme forms of coercive control from men that we don't even know that are going to be in our computer, are going to have our private videos that were taken with violence from us, from our bodies, and are going to, who knows what they're sharing about us when we are being stalked and we are being object of continuous threats and privacy breaches. What is behind that? Why does it happen? Because I heard a lot of people, both men and women, of like that have embraced new ages ways of spirituality, so called, that speak about such things as you attracted it, or it's your fault in a way, that you attract these horrible men that do that to women, that it's somehow your fault, that somehow you have some karmic responsibility that in the Western mindset translates it into a fault, a guilt, as something that you have done wrong. That is not at all different from the witch hunt itself of 400 years, or the witch hunts, like where innocent people that were scapegoated were tried and killed legally for the amusement of others. This is where we come from as humans. And in terms of the value, that we give, and it's also not different from saying that the girl with the short skirt was in any way attracting the guy who raped her. Or it's not different from saying that, like I always make an example, this shocking example of the court of Florence some years ago that said that this girl that was gang raped by I don't know how many men, and she... the sentence was somehow diminished to the guys because she was considered to be like of free costumes of some kind. I don't remember what the legal term was because I don't study jurisprudence, but other than for my own needs, I would say. But they did say that because she was bisexual, essentially, it was less serious. Or there was that court that didn't, in America, in the States, in the USA, that didn't try a man for sexual abuse because there was actually not penetration or something. Like, you hear all the actual nonsense from our completely sick societies where courts are just, and the academia, I would say, are just the most sick places of all, but the courts are worse than the academia, because at least in the academia you can talk about everything, which you can't in normal life. You can study anything and propose any theory as long as you can back it up with primary source evidence and sufficiently secondary source evidence as well that is sufficiently discussed and organized. But in the courts, you can get evicted from your house after being caused serious damages such as miscarriage and not get legal defense unless you are absolutely determined um, too, which I am, and I mean, I got very, very little defense. So why do we arrive to this point? How do we arrive to this point that we can be so devalued, that we get um, marginalized to that point that someone that is not a criminal can be turned into a criminal by the media, by the people, by the media, and in cases that get to jail, maybe like Lisa Temple, that is an arbitrator in Ireland, and she has gone to jail with the 10-year sentence, and she just came out. I don't know exactly what happened because I still didn't have the time to do my own things at the moment. But it's still on this wave of stalking and criminalizing women that are victims actually of crimes, of organized crime, and criminalizing us regardless of what position we have in society, what status we have in society, what support net we have. Because I mean, some people have, some people lose it all by stalking. I didn't get to the point of losing every contact completely, but really nearly in recent years. So how do we get to this point? And I think it's always people that are already vulnerable that become victim of stalking. They are vulnerable to be marginalized. That is why it's so important that if you ever come across a victim of stalking, someone that tells you, I remained alone, that you do not judge her, that you believe her, because remember that if you don't believe her, she will not believe you. And that is true about every survivor, but it's particularly true about women because we are the most fragile and vulnerable presence to be alone on this earth, because we are victim of the oldest kind of violence that exists on earth, that is gender violence. And it is recognized as a hate crime in some country, like in Italy, where it is like the highest recorded crime. But I mean, I think I think that there is countries that are actually worse than Italy up in the north, because the same violence exists and it's just not talked about. Just because Italian men and French men are particularly passionate, and so there is such a thing as the crime of passion. Uh, but it's terrible that there should be such a thing, and so yeah, maybe because of that, Mediterranean women have more vaccinations against gender violence than the ones in the north that have more wealth. And I don't know, they are more coerced easily because they have a different history. It's a different history of abuse, of gender violence, the one in the north and the one in the south. And I believe, I am under the impression that Argentinian and South American women and Russian women and Italian women and Spanish women and Greek women, I mean Mediterranean women and Eastern women and women from places like South America are much more aware of these issues and dynamics that concern the need of recovering women's solidarity to be safe as a collective, not just as women, because we give life. This is something to remember in this age of machineries where everyone presumes that you can even replace a womb artificially. And I have been prevented from having a happy and safe pregnancy since 2016. I'm not saying that it was all stalking, it was also displacement and the difficulty to, to find permanent work and in the areas that I was studying and what I was doing, and also my work as an anthropologist. I'm not saying that I was for 9 years unable to, but for the past 5 years, yes, and that is a tremendous amount of time, especially between the age of 40 and 45. I'm now 46, so the key to understand why we are a victim of stalking is not to judge ourselves or let other people judge us and use the word victimize. Like, don't let anybody tell you that you are playing a victim because you're speaking out. Like, headbutt them if you got to, show them the finger, but do not respond and do not lower your head to any such comment, because people must stop to say such things. And in fact, they should be afraid of saying such things. It should be so illegal, like to say like to say Nazi words to people, like to say nigger, like to say racist word. It should be illegal to make comments, remarks that underline the ignorance towards a crime that is even worse than racism, and it's even older, that is gender violence against women. It's a form of hate crime, and it is recognized by the law as that nowadays. So do not allow any person, pseudo-spiritual person, and it's the majority of people, and it's certainly the majority of so-called pseudo-spiritual, like these so-called spiritual Western women that I have come across in my life. And I say Western as a general term for white dominant societies. It's just horrendous the way in which women generally devalue the experience of women that are victim of gender violence. It becomes immediate synonymous of your own personality and your own social status, instead of being a description of the men that are doing that to women, not of the women at all, because it's never the woman responsible or the one who needs to motivate or know why men do this. I mean, I have a faint idea why this started, because it started from a relationship of love with another woman that someone didn't want, who presumed to own her. But again, that is the value. It's the valuing herself. So she was with a man that believed that owned her. Like now I am in the place of a woman that she believes that everybody owns her from my point of view. Like when I was here, her two guests both owned her. And they had a relationship between themselves, not with her, but still owned her. Like you couldn't give her something that wouldn't get stolen from her room. There was no privacy, there was no private information. Apart from the fact that here there was stalking, in fact, but and we are talking about that. But in general, like when our boundaries are weak, this is when it starts. It's not that you attracted it because you wear a short skirt. You can wear a short skirt, like my friend Jasmina in New York, and she was like changing her skirt in the middle of the night after a drag king show in the Bronx, and getting, at 3 in the morning in the tube, like we were 22, and she was getting changed, and nothing ever happened to her. But I don't know, like if I did something like that, I would be in trouble right away. It's something really deeply energetic, and something to learn, to be like the water, that you can have your boundaries high, and you can run everywhere, and you can pass unnoticed everywhere like the water, that sips into everything. I am not like that. So wherever I go, not for a fault of my own, just how I've always been, because I was just an outsider when I was little as well, and you just kind of stick out just because you weren't raised with all the same plants, like zucchinis. If you put zucchinis all in the same field, with they maybe will grow similar sizes under the same sun, under same water conditions and fertilizers. But if you have some zucchinis without fertilizers, and just an example, without fertilizer and without crop, and without the same field, and you will find zucchinis of every shape, you know. And there is some people out there that say that all the zucchinis have to be the same, and it's not true, or that there should be only zucchinis and not other veggies out in the fields, and the same as the human society. So, like when I'm thinking deep down, like why every stocking that I had, the way that it started, it was to do with my father, who in fact was always someone who went through my diaries and invaded my privacy and didn't let me have my privacy, as a way to take care of me for my own best, and damaged me in that way. And then, these scars run deep, and you can do all the kind of self-development, spiritual work, and you want, but until you face it, in the consequence sometimes that it's a stalk in itself, and it's an illness. It's like an illness, a collective illness that affects the soul, in my opinion, the collective soul, and affects women that are, especially, and boys also, like autistic boys especially, that are just, or boys with disabilities, like especially at school, but women all ages especially, and are victim of this kind of organized stalking. And it's always the value, it's always the value that comes first from the family, and then from our social surroundings. It can be, well, in my case, because I am gay, they would say, although that's not exactly my definition, but like whatever you are, whatever is the reason why someone is, it can be that you are not gay, but you are with someone that had a relationship with someone else and start stalking you as a man. I don't know that, if it's possible. Usually men sort it in a different way between themselves, but I don't know. As a woman, it's not fun, and it's always to do with the value. Like I was talking to my father these days sometimes, and I always shout and am angry with him, because there is nobody that can make me angry like my father. Because essentially, even when he's helping, even if it's doing that job for like 20 years, or I don't know long, to defend people, like when it comes to the woman, to the miscarriage that a woman can be caused with the trespasses and with violation of privacy. And as we discuss these, we are discussing another one that I had in Italy, when my house was trespassed by a man that owned the local pizzeria. From whom I had tremendous disturbance, because I moved to this place. We got this house long ago because it was quiet. not because it was loud, and they started being very loud, and then they caused tremendous disturbance, and they didn't allow me to sell the house when it was possible to sell half of it to a friend, which would have enabled us to live there together. Although, I mean, Italy has never been my choice, but that was like 2022. There was a faint attempt to return to Italy, which failed. And there was like it was like, again, defamation, granting someone to come in my room where I was sleeping, pregnant and not fully dressed because I was in my bedroom. And he came with a sewer that he cut the garden fence, and he came in and shouting and accusing me of things that I hadn't done, that someone I had hosted that had full access to the house and the keys had accused me of, because of all that online defamation that there was, and what was doing to people, what does to communication, how, like, this person was hosted in my house for free, had the keys of my house, but somehow eh, was asked to leave because she hadn't given me the documents, which was a necessity to register her, even if she stayed for free as a cat sitter. And she was requested not to abuse the animals, because she did. She was keeping the dog on a chain. For one, she had lost in the streets when she just arrived, and the other one, she had tied in the gardens of the neighbor, which was not allowed, and I was getting in trouble because the dog was digging huge holes in this place that was not allowed to stay. And it was like on the code for 24 hours 7, that is illegal. So I called animal protection. um Obviously, like, what else was I to do? Like, I tried to tell her that the dog would be free in the garden, which was fenced, and instead of agreeing to that when she was my guest and that was the only place where she could keep the dog, she abused me and said that I had to deal with their decisions, and also said I do not want to see animals with like cats with collars, because my cat almost died. And I almost died myself of stranglement, and I cannot see things like that in my house. So that was, and from that it became that I was a bad person that was not returning Jasmine her things, when Jasmine actually had taken all the things away already from the house, and had left some of the things, and had the keys still of my house, and she had my phone number and phone numbers of my friends. She had the keys, and I just had closed the gate at midnight, because after you don't hear from a guest, after a certain time, you lock, right? If you don't know when they're coming back to pick up their things, when things haven't gone well, right? But from that, I was assaulted at home, and told that my house and my beautiful house and my beautiful garden that I spent so many years making with my mom, like it would be something disgusting and horrible, and that I was crazy, and she insulted me in front of all the village. And that is just like the fact. And then he offered money to my mother. I don't know how much and what, because after my house was vandalized, I was not able, like, it was completely destroyed. The door around was destroyed, and the inside of the house was destroyed, and it had been trespassed so many times, that house, from like 2012. That was but stolen too, but that was just pure beating up, just my things smashed, my printer that I had, like, my digital printer that I needed so much for work, and every time I was almost taking it away with me, and smashed, everything was smashed, destroyed, my paintings, my documents, my, I don't know, I can't even And I never went back because the trauma was such, and my mother took the keys and she never gave me the keys back. So I do not have access to that house again. It's hers really. But what shocks me the most is that after that I have been through the most painful and scary years of my life, because from 2022 I've been on the go and I haven't been able to recover my relationships after that. There is so much damage done through online identity theft that most relationships are unapproachable, and I do not contact again anyone that doesn't contact me back, contact me first from the past, because I do not know how bad the damage has been, but I know that it was very serious because I can see, I saw it in court, I saw it on summons, I saw it on the faces of the people of the villages where I lived, where I hardly went out, and I kept being reported to social services when I was not doing anything strange or weird, other than now again going to drum, which I do not think is very, very strange in a hippie village like where that one where I was, where everybody has a drum pretty much, even if maybe they don't use it. So yeah, just some thoughts that are all around. Like when I think about what makes it possible is the value that we do not give to women in general, to women as a being. That is something that is lost in the new society, or that is only maintained by the feminist as a revendication of rights. And it's right, I am a feminist, but it's not all. There is because even that is just about the value of the person in the modern society. There is not a value special to the woman as a woman being, as we call it, as a giver of life. There is no special value of that. And it's not just a giver of life that was valued in the ancient societies, both matriarchal and patriarchal, actually, because for a long time in Europe, there were groups of virgins, of so-called, because it didn't mean chaste. That is something you can follow in my studies. It meant independent, really, virgin originally as a word, like the independent and intact and free from the yoke of marriage, literally. And adamete, that in Greek means like undomitable, and it cannot be dominated. There have always been these ancient groups of vessels that were to keep the integrity of the society, and that could only be kept a bit like the Kurdish women there in Kurdistan nowadays, that did not get married, and because there is there is a there is a stronghold of sovereignty in the woman that can only remain completely intact when you're not married, because when you're in a relationship you want to in somehow please or agree or compromise, with that man, with that person. Whereas the fact that some women maintained this sovereignty, that is what I study, it's the subject of all my studies, that is perceived like such a threat by certain men. But actually it was just for the whole society. They were believed to bring fortunes. They were called, the femme fatale comes from fata, the weaver. Or like the Norns, like the Moiras, they were believed to be the weavers of life because they maintained that spirit of sovereignty. And so even the patriarchal society respected them. in Roma, in Athens, even where we know that women, there was a time so patriarchal in Athens that women were said to go out only twice, when they're born, when they're married, and when they died. How wonderful. So like in Sparta, on the other hand, in name of this ancient sovereignty, the marriages between women were the most sacred, like in certain Celtic tribes that were matrilineal in Ireland, um, because they maintained the original memory of that sovereignty, and so they were respected as the carriers of fortune and of good luck for the crops and for the fields. Um, and there was this painting that ended up in my first eviction trial that was incredibly similar to this one, and based on homophobia again, essentially, and on as well as, and there are four of my studies that are based on these ancient cones that were women centered. And there was this painting that I made of a woman that raised her skirt to fertilize the fields. It's like a photo of the National Geographic of an ancient ritual that survives in Ukraine, and that is based on the idea that from the giver of life is all the fortune that exists. And so in order to fertilize the land, a woman just had to raise her skirt. That was the source of to show the source of life, essentially, like in that wonderful painting L'Origine du Monde, that was made by a Frenchman in the 19th century. Yeah, and they just and so this innocent painting, because it was a painting of an Ukrainian cones that survived up to the 90s, that is parallel to the things I study. I was also tried for that painting, like the whole fight, the whole eviction fight, on which the fight on which the eviction was based, that wasn't a fight from my side because I meant no harm, was because of that painting that I was criminalized in that place. And thereafter I have never, like, if I had known that by making this painting I would get these people on my back, I mean, I'm not saying that it was just for the painting, it was for the whole situation, but they attack women that are vulnerable at the same time as trying to assert that ancient, or that I call it ancient, but maybe for you it's not ancient, it's modern, but in any way, contemporary or ancient, it doesn't matter, sovereignty. They attack women that know a lot, that study a lot, or that love differently, or they stand for their opinions, or they do not lower their head to, pure evil, as Lisa Temple rightly calls it. And so, I had a friend that I considered a friend, and I don't anymore, because then you get to see really real people how they really are. And he said to me that, I cannot align with what happened to another woman that was victim of, and it was a different story, different story of stalking, but still from the same people. And even though it's not physically the same man, it's the same kind of community. It's the same. I don't know what sect. Maybe they should be called a sect. They are not a community, because community means to communicate. It's based on the idea of communication, and what they do is coercive control. And I am sure that a lot of men and women that belong in that community, so-called 6 million people, cannot be aware of the horrors that they really do, what they really do to women, the men. And they have a special way that they have to keep the women to somehow make the women feel good and without problems, so that they keep that social cover, and at the same time they will continue to attack your sense of worth when you are a victim of stalking, because what they attack is really your worth of life, your value to yourself. So it took me like all these years to understand that I had to spend money for like to finish my money, that I had to spend it for a lawyer, that I wouldn't get it for free, that this summer was the judge time, that I was like, okay. And then it got too late, so don't wait, don't contribute to the valuing to the devaluing culture in which you ended up in that way, because otherwise you never get out of it.